It's presented by the Williamson Inc., our Williamson County Chamber of Commerce. We're glad to have you with us this morning and hope that you will participate in our question and answer session at the end. Our guests this morning are our state legislative delegation from Williamson County, starting with Senator Jack Johnson. We've got our representatives Charles Sargent and Glen Casada with us this morning, and Jeremy Durham, we hope, is on the way.
I texted him.
So he is, has he responded?
Not yet.
That's
These young guys, it's hard to get them out of bed.
I know the feeling. Jack, let's start with you. Talk a little bit about your new assignments for this year. Senator Johnson represents the entire Williamson County area. You're the smallest district in the state by population, is that right?
Well, I was right after the census. I'm pretty sure our county's grown. I'm probably not the smallest anymore, but I was at the beginning of the decade.
All right. And you are chairman of which committee? Senate Commerce and Labor Committee.
I was reappointed as chairman of the Senate Commerce and Labor Committee by the Lieutenant Governor, and also serving on the State and Local Government Committee, which are the same committee assignments I had in the previous General Assembly, so I'm excited about that.
What does the Commerce and Labor Committee do?
Commerce and Labor Committee handles, basically, if you think about a business issue or a business-related issue, whether it's banking, insurance, real estate, if it's a regulatory issue or a business-related piece of legislation, it will likely get referred to the Senate Commerce and Labor Committee. That handles the commerce component, and then the labor component, we also handle any issues dealing with labor union-related bills, also workers' compensation, unemployment compensation, and things of that nature. So it's a pretty busy committee, and it's a lot of fun to get to chair that. And obviously, with Williamson County being the economic engine that it is for the state, with all the great things we have going on here in Williamson County, I think it's appropriate to have that representation on that committee.
Good deal. Now, your wife received an honor recently.
She did. Very proud of my wife, Deanna. She was appointed by Governor Haslam to be one of our 4 circuit court judges here in the 21st Judicial District. She's a 23-year practicing attorney, and her predecessor was Judge Tim Easter, who's a friend of many in this room, and he was appointed by Governor Haslam to move up to the Criminal Court of Appeals back mid last year, and that created a vacancy there, and my wife went through the process. The governor has a nominating commission that vets those candidates, and she received a unanimous recommendation from the nominating commission, which is made up of attorneys from across the state, and subsequently she was appointed by the governor. So very proud of her. It's a little scary having a wife that can lock you up, though. I will say that.
I'm sure most of our wives could do that in one way or another. No, mine can't. Charles Sargent, chairman of the House, help me out.
Finance, Ways and Means.
Finance, Ways and Means Committee, and a member of several other committees. Tell us about the Finance, Ways and Means Committee and your responsibilities there.
Well, the Finance, Ways and Means Committee looks at probably 60% of all the bills that come through the House and the Senate, because they'll have a fiscal note on it. So it's going to cost us money, so we have to look at it and see if we're going to approve it, see if we can afford to approve it. We look at all expenditures and revenues. So we do, after the revenues are estimated, then we have to work the expenditures inside the total package.
Great. All right, sir.
That's an easy way of saying that.
Any other notable changes to your personal situation since our last?
No, I'll be chairman of that and vice chairman of pensions and insurance. I will still sit on insurance and banking. And I sit on several other committees.
All rise.
So basically, Finance, Ways and Means is the major committee.
Great. Glen Casada.
Morning, Dave.
Good morning, sir. And you are serve on several committees in the House.
I do.
You're now the Republican Caucus Chair.
Yes.
Again this year. That was the same as last year.
Yes, it was.
What does the Caucus Chair do?
The last day, I took phone calls because members didn't like their office assignment, which is always a lot of fun. Yeah, working with the chairmans, working with leadership, we put together an agenda, we put together direction, and working with members to help them solve those issues that are of concern or of interest to them. So,
Okay.
it's a position of servanthood.
At the end of session, he also gets a lot of phone calls saying that I killed his bill, or the members' bill. So he gets it coming and going.
Great, good. And Jeremy Durham, good to have you with us this morning. And
Always on time.
always on time. And Jeremy, you're the caucus whip. Is that what it's called?
That's it.
Recently elected to a new position there in the House. Tell us about it.
Well, basically, it's I would just encourage you not to watch House of Cards because that's not really what happens. I think eventually we'll need to count some votes, but it's a good thing for Williamson County. It's number 4 in our caucus leadership, which obviously goes well with our caucus chairman, our chair of finance, and the Senate Commerce chairman. So it's just another way that we can draw more attention to the concerns of Williamson County. That's the way I look at it.
Great. Now, you serve on several committees, and any other responsibilities in particular that have changed this year?
Well, I was on Insurance and Banking full with Charles and Glen. I'm now on the subcommittee, which I think is a good thing. That's the first 8 people that get to see those bills, and also state government. I was on local last time. There's probably some local elected officials who are pretty happy to see me on the state government committee, not the local government committee. But I think that'll be interesting. It'll give me an opportunity to see how state government works a little bit more under the surface. So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Great, good. Well, as we can see, our delegation has risen to the top again and has lots of responsibility in the House and Senate, and we're proud of you for that, guys. This year, the topic of conversation, at least in the media, is almost all about Insure Tennessee, the governor's new proposal to modify Medicaid, I guess is one way to put it. Jack, if you would, kind of give us a history on this issue. Goes back to the Bredesen administration, I think, and then tell us, what is it all about?
Okay, sure, I'll be glad to, and I'll try not to put everyone to sleep, but that's one of the things I enjoy about doing this program is we get to delve a little deeper into some of these issues that are very complex, regardless of the side you come down on, and it's a great opportunity, I think, to give people some backstory that you may or may not already know about. In Tennessee, we're a bit unique in that our Medicaid program is called TennCare, and it is actually a waiver program that was originally passed in 1994 under Governor Ned McWhorter. And what Governor McWhorter did at that time is he went to HHS and said, we would like to do things a little differently in Tennessee. We would like to have some additional flexibility with our Medicaid program here. And he was granted that authority. If you remember, the president at the time was Bill Clinton, and Governor McWhorter and President Clinton were friends, and of course the vice president was Al Gore from Tennessee, who was very close with Ned McWhorter. So some history there that they allowed Tennessee to do some things that maybe they would not otherwise allow a state to do. Well, effectively what happened is they expanded the program fairly significantly and contributed some additional state dollars and enrolled some more people. And I think the grand scheme of things, or the intention was to use the HMO idea. If you remember back when HMOs, health maintenance organizations, were very popular to try to control costs and insure more people or cover more people. Well, quite frankly, it didn't work that well, and what we ended up was with a lot of additional people on our Medicaid rolls. It ended up being a significant portion of our state budget. And at one time, we were spending more on Medicaid than we were anything else in the state budget. It was well over 1/3 of our state budget. So fast forward, Governor Bredesen comes into office in 2002, and he has to disenroll about 172,000 people from the program to get it back under control. And that was a pretty nasty time. This is around 2005, 2006. Y'all may remember that when it was in the news. There were lawsuits, there was protest, and all these types of things. Well, and then in 2009, President Obama and the Democrats in Congress passed the Affordable Care Act, what we refer to as Obamacare. A key component of Obamacare as passed was that states would be forced to expand their Medicaid eligible population from up to those at or below 138% of the federal poverty level. And the stick that they used to make states to do that was to say, if you don't expand to 138% of the federal poverty level, we'll take away all of your Medicaid money. So it was basically going to force, and keep in mind the existing Medicaid program, what we call TennCare, is a 2-to-1 match. The state puts in $1 and the federal government puts in $2. And so that was the stick that they were using to do this. And if you remember, there was also an individual mandate as part of Obamacare. Well, there were lawsuits, and NFIB versus Sebelius was the one that made it up to the Supreme Court. And there were several things in that lawsuit that were being challenged. The one most of us were watching very closely was the constitutionality of the individual mandate. Because many thought, I'm not a lawyer, but I thought that the individual mandate was constitutionally suspect at best. Well, the Supreme Court said that the individual mandate was in fact constitutional, but another thing that was challenged was the mandate that states expand their Medicaid population. And to some of our surprise, the Supreme Court said that that was unconstitutional, that in fact the federal government could not require you to expand this Medicaid population and threaten to withhold your other Medicaid dollars. So in effect, it made this Medicaid expansion voluntary on the part of the states. And some states have done it and some states haven't. Thus far, Tennessee has chosen not to expand that Medicaid population. Well, so what we have now in the books is a jumbled mess. And it's a jumbled mess that we didn't create in the state of Tennessee. We didn't create, Governor Haslam didn't create it, the Tennessee General Assembly didn't create it. I'm not very shy about my criticisms of the federal government, but effectively an inept and incompetent federal government created this mess. And so we have those below 100% of the federal poverty level, not all of them, but basically women and children, pregnant women and children, disabled people, so forth, that are covered under the existing TennCare program. Now, if you're above that 138% of the federal poverty level, you get subsidies under Obamacare to buy health insurance through the exchanges. And keep in mind, 138% of federal poverty level for an individual is around $16,000 a year. For a family of 4, I think it's $32,000 or $33,000 a year. So if you're at 139% of the federal poverty level, you're getting money from the federal government to help you buy insurance. If you're on the lower end, you're probably on TennCare, or you have a chance. We have this donut hole of people, and in Tennessee it's roughly 470,000 people that aren't getting subsidies to buy insurance, and they're not eligible for TennCare. They were supposed to be covered by this mandatory expansion of Medicaid. So what the governor did is he...
My eyes are glazing over.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The governor, after it was passed in 2013 in his State of the State address, he said, we are not going to expand Medicaid. We're not just going to add these people to what is really a broken system. Medicaid, we have physicians and healthcare providers in the audience, and I think many of them would tell you it's not a terribly efficient or well-run program. We're not going to do that, is what the governor said. He said, I am going to work with HHS to try to negotiate an arrangement or something we can do in Tennessee that will be good for Tennesseans. 2 years later, he has that agreement now with HHS. It's what he has put forward for us to consider. We'll be in special session next week. Effectively, his plan for these people in that donut hole will provide 2 pathways. If you work for an employer that offers health insurance, you'll get a voucher to help you buy health insurance through your employer. If you don't, if you're unemployed or you work for an employer that doesn't offer health insurance, then you can enroll in Medicaid, but there are some stipulations. You'll pay premiums and you'll pay co-pays, which are not required under traditional Medicaid. Additionally, there are some incentives in there for healthy behavior. To encourage people. Tennessee is not a healthy state. We all know that. And that's what he is doing or proposing to do with those people that fall in the donut hole. We're going to talk about pros. I'm not trying to argue for or against the program. I'm trying to, as innocuously as I can, lay out what has been proposed. We've got 45 minutes. I'm sure we'll have a lot of conversation about the good points and the bad points of the plan. full disclosure, I am undecided on the proposal. We're going to get convened on Monday, and we'll hear more about it.
Couple of questions for Jackie, and then, gentlemen, there's plenty for you
He's
all
doing a good job, man.
That's good.
I see about half the people asleep, but
Now, a couple things about it that caught my attention. One, the governor has stated that this will not cost the taxpayers of Tennessee anything. And part of that formula that he has negotiated with HHS is that eventually the hospitals will actually be paying part of the cost of this program. Is that correct?
yeah, for calendar year 16, which would probably be the earliest that we could have if it passes, if the resolution passes that authorizes the governor to pursue this, calendar year 2016, the match would be, or the federal government would pay for 100% of the cost of this program. Now, keep in mind, when we say the federal government is paying for it, that means we're paying for it. I mean, and we're talking about a federal government that is broke. They're $18 trillion in debt. So I always feel like we need to throw in that full disclosure. In calendar year 2017, it goes to 97%. Now, if we had implemented this when it was originally passed, or when we could have first done it, it would have been for 3 years, fully paid for by the federal government. Ultimately, the state will be on the hook for 10% of the cost. I told you existing Medicaid is a 2-to-1 match. As proposed, for this expanded population, it will be a 9-to-1 match. So the state will be on the hook for 10% of the cost. The hospitals have, not all hospitals, but those hospitals that are currently paying a voluntary assessment to draw down additional Medicaid dollars have agreed to extend or expand, increase what they are being assessed to make up for that 10%. In theory, if everything were to go to plan, then the hospitals would be paying that, the federal government would be paying 90%. The governor has made very clear that if any of that changes, if the hospitals say we're not going to do that anymore, or if the federal government were to change their commitment or renege on any portion of their commitment, then the entire plan would be terminated. Now, that's easier said than done. Remember, that's why I was very clear about what happened in 2005 and 2006, when I wasn't in the General Assembly at the time, but I'm quite aware, and Charles was, Glen was there. It was a bloodbath. So it's much easier said than done to say you're going to put these people on health care, on health insurance or some type of a health care program, and then say, well, if it doesn't work, we'll take them off. And the governor acknowledges that. He's not trying to snow anybody, but that's much easier said than done.
Let's come back to the pros and cons here in just a minute, Jack. Jeremy, you've come out, you've been quoted as being vehemently opposed to this bill. Why? Tell us what the other side of the story is.
Well, if you just look at what's happening, I mean, we criticize President Obama for wealth redistribution, and this is exactly what it is. I mean, basically, you have our federal treasury that's mainly funded by income taxes, by people who work, and you're going to use that money to increase entitlements. And I just didn't know that Republicans were elected to increase entitlements. So just from a 30,000 foot perspective, not even getting into the details, not getting into the problem with the matching formula, not getting into the fact that Williamson County is 91% insured, and we stand the least to gain from every state. We also pay a lot higher proportion of taxes compared to other districts. But just looking at it, it just doesn't seem like a very conservative idea. We've been here before. We had to remove 172,000 people from the rolls from our last Medicaid expansion. That one almost bankrupted our state. It just doesn't really sound like a good idea to me.
Okay, so Williamson County being almost the center of the universe of the healthcare industry, maybe a little bit north of the county line, but currently there's 470,000 Tennesseans that don't have health insurance.
Sure.
that this bill would address. That the hospitals are providing that health care free at this point. Would this not be something that our industry here in the state would benefit from?
Well, you always have to take into account jobs that are in your area, but you have to listen to your constituents more than you have to listen to special interests. I'm listening to taxpayers in Williamson County more than I am the special interests. But you know, you mentioned that this population, it's not fully paid for by the hospitals. There are dish payments, which, just remember, now, the hospitals, they're very important to us. I believe they're the largest private industry employer in the state of Tennessee. Let's be very clear that we're not beating up on the hospitals, but here's what happened. The hospitals negotiated a deal with President Obama that went bad, the same guy that gave us, if you like your insurance, you can keep it. And personally, that's not really the path that I'd like to go down. They decided if you will force these state taxpayers to increase their Medicaid rolls and you'll force them to pay this, we will agree to a reduction in dish payments. Well, the Supreme Court said they don't have to expand their Medicaid rolls. That sounds to me like they should go back to the bargaining table, go back to the federal government, and not put our state's financial solvency at risk, because that's exactly what we did last time. The last time we did this, we had to survive a state income tax fight. And, you know, we can talk about how that it's a 2-year pilot. 172,000 people did not go off the rolls quietly. So whether you believe it's 300,000, 200,000, the people are not going to go off the rolls quietly. It will be a big, big deal. The problem is last year we had a situation where TennCare told us that there would be 50,000 new enrollees on TennCare because of what's called the woodwork effect. The woodwork effect basically means that the Affordable Care Act made it a lot easier to get onto TennCare, just getting on there, like even if you were already eligible. We thought 50,000 would come on, 120,000 came on. And we don't get a 9-to-1 match or 100% match on that. We still have to figure out how to pay for that. That is a 2-to-1 match. So we really don't know how many people are coming on the rolls. We're looking at what's happened in Arkansas. They may have to ask the federal government to bail out their program. And they did a private option like what the governor's trying to do. So it's really not that different. We're looking at a lot of problems in Arkansas. And I just feel like if we're fiscally responsible, why don't we wait and see what's going on? And as a conservative, if you have all these red states that get so intertwined in Obamacare that 2 years from now, if we have the right kind of government in Washington to do something about it, it'll be politically impossible. So I think it's very important that at least for the next couple of years we hold the line and we do not expand Medicaid.
Okay. Now, Glenn, you've been quoted as being somewhat on the fence, but
I think I've just failed to the right, but
the Americans for Prosperity have been beating up on one of your
yes.
House members down in Chattanooga, and you've come out to his defense. Tell us
I have.
what's going on in your head.
And look, what we need in this state is a good, honest debate. We're having that good, honest debate. You know, we have the pros, and as Jeremy so articulated so well, why we shouldn't expand it, and we need that engagement, and we need you to be engaged with us to share your opinion. What we don't need is a group, is a special interest in its way, a group that I agree with, by the way, most of the time, is Americans for Prosperity. But we don't come just attacking someone because they don't kowtow to your beliefs. Groups organize to encourage voter participation. They educate us as Tennesseans, but I don't think it's their place to attack in a personal matter any legislator who doesn't vote like you want them to vote.
Great. I'm glad you have taken that position. I think that's the way anybody with some common sense should be able to
Thank you.
think through these things, especially as complex as some of them can be. Now, let's talk about the politics of it just a minute. Speaker Harwell has said that this has got to go through 3 committees, as I understand it, one of which all 3 of you all are on, the Insurance and Finance Committee. Glenn, tell us a little bit about the way that's laying out. And
Well, and on yesterday, we met, the Speaker and I, and Majority Leader, Charles was in that room, and we've kind of outlined a map. And most of the House members, and we all know the House does all the work in the General Assembly. The Senate's kind of the show horse up there. But we're going to give this a fair hearing. We're going to listen to the governor's presentation Monday night. We're going to have hearings all day Tuesday. We'll have Health Committee and the committee we serve on, Commerce and Insurance, meet and listen to the debate, both pro and con. And we will spend a long day Tuesday listening to those presentations. And then we'll circle back with the caucus and see where we in the caucus are on this issue, and then make our decision what our next step is after that.
Okay. Now, does the the caucus chair, what's your role in all this as the caucus chair?
Don't laugh, but truly, I'm there just to make sure a fair hearing is heard, and that every member has the chance to express their opinion, and then before we proceed, to make sure we move forward on what's best for the majority and what's best for Tennessee.
Okay. And Jeremy, what about the whip? Do you have any official job here as the whip?
Counting votes, but it's pretty clear. Finance committee, it'll be fine. Health committee's a toss-up. Insurance and banking committee, it's dead.
You
So
say it's dead in the insurance.
House insurance and banking, it is dead.
Explain that to us.
It just doesn't have the votes.
And the significance of that.
It just doesn't have the votes. That we have 10 care hearings in House insurance and banking, and there's not, the votes are not there. The undecideds are not there.
Okay.
I mean, there's enough firm no's with 2 insurance votes to kill it.
Okay. And if it doesn't pass that committee, then it's dead in the House.
It's dead.
Is that the way it works? Okay. Then Charles, as chairman of the finance committee, what does the finance committee look like? Just in case it happens to.
To be honest, I have not tried to take account in the finance committee because I don't think it's ever going to make it to that position. There are a large number of questions left unanswered on what financially it's going to cost the state of Tennessee. Mm-hmm. I mean, this past year we put an additional $170 million into the budget for TennCare and Medicare, and so there's a big cost factor that's out there that at the present time all those questions are unanswered. Unless we get those questions answered, we cannot continue to sustain putting $100 to $200 million per year into a program. If we continue down that road, we will not be able to fund education, highways, even though highways are, and I shouldn't use that as an example because that is a dedicated fund, but our education and everything else we do in the state becomes less important or no money to do this. And every year, just under a BEP program, just the way it's set up, it costs us $60–70 million a year just through normal increases that's built into the BEP, or the Better Education Program. This year, we're looking at probably additional revenues, maybe of $300 million. So if I have to take $200 million for this program, 50 or 60, possibly 70 million for the BEP, other things that we have to do, that's it. So, and this is what happened with our TennCare program. The expenses got up to 31–32% of our entire budget. After we took people off, we went back down to 27%. It's sneaking back up to 30% now. So we have to get this under control, and the cost, everything, I think everyone's done an excellent job on explaining the different points. Like I said, what Jeremy talked about on the woodworking effect, they estimated we'd add 50 to 65,000. We've done over 120,000. They're estimating we'll add 200,000 under this program. Jack has made a comment that there are about 450,000 out there. So we know the number is somewhere between 200,000 and 450,000. And that effect, even if we're only picking up 10% of that cost, it's just an outrageous cost that we cannot financially afford to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, the program may be a good program, but if you cannot fit it into the budget, it cannot work. And I'm not, and I don't think anybody at this table here wants to turn around and tell our school system, you have to cut. Because we are the fastest growing school system in the state. Right. I think we grew this year 1,150 students, and this costs money. Mm-hmm. It costs money for the state as well as our county. And if we keep on doing this, the consequences are that we're not going to fund it in the state, and it will come back to the county to fund. So what happens? more tax increases, more property tax increase, because we will keep on continuing to cutting our funding that we give to our counties. And I don't think that's what we're there to do.
Right. So it's just arithmetic, is that right?
You know, and everyone serves different roles.
Right.
Financially, this is not something, and we're meeting with the hospitals today, and I'm trying to learn additional numbers. We talked about the match. All the hospitals said they would be assessed 4.6 of their revenues, and don't ask me exactly if it's gross net on the revenues, but it's basically 4.6%. They're going to have to raise that to 6%.
Right.
Williams County, or Williamson Medical Center, does not pay that assessment. 39 hospitals in the state do not pay that assessment.
Okay.
I don't know if all of a sudden there's a lawsuit saying every hospital has to pay it, what that even does to our Williamson Medical Center if they have to pay a 6% assessment.
Right.
So these are all the financial numbers that no one is willing to answer. I mean, I could go down a list of financial numbers. And so
Now, is the governor likely to answer those questions Monday night?
I doubt it.
Some of them you just can't
the
answer.
reason I'm saying I doubt it is that a lot of these numbers are unknown numbers.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, we can estimate, like I said, what we did last year on the woodworking effect, adding, we thought 60,000, we're over 120,000. We added $170 million into the program last year.
Right.
For, say, 100,000 people. And that number is going to get larger every year because right now, like Jack said, Senator said, that we're going to pick up 100%, then it's going to drop 97, 98, 95, and then go down to 90. Well, as that happens, we're talking 2020, 2022.
Right.
But we can't go down this financial road and say, okay, I'm not going to be here in 2022,
Right.
and I'm going to leave it to someone else to fix this problem.
Right.
That's what the federal government does. And we cannot, we have to have correct, accurate numbers. And at the present time, the numbers are not there, and I don't see the budget. Whatever number we come up with, you know, if we come up with $200 or $300 million, it just does not fit in the Tennessee budget to do that.
Okay. Jeremy, we're coming back
I'll
to
be
you.
quick.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll be quick. There's problems, in my opinion, with how the governor wants to fund the state's share. One of the reasons that I believe the governor must call this a 2-year pilot is because the numbers do not make sense long term. That puts us in a very difficult position in 2 years. Do we remove health care? Do we take money away from schools? What do we do? But here's how he wants to fund it. He wants to use the existing hospital assessment fee. Basically, the hospitals hand us $1, we soften it through state government, the federal government matches it 2 to 1, we put 50 cents in our pocket, and we give the money back to the hospitals. We don't take advantage of that as much as we could right now, and he wants to increase that. The problem is, when you have provider taxes like that are 8 to 1, 9 to 1 ratios, states will take advantage of them, and it very much increases the national debt, so much that Barack Obama in his budget last year proposed that we eliminate half of that provider tax, which would actually cut into what we do right now. You also have Senator Corker and Alexander who co-sponsored legislation to do away with this completely. So anyone who is very serious at the national level about getting our financial house in order, you have to look at the entitlements. You have to look at Medicare and Medicaid. The political realities of Medicare means it's probably going to be Medicaid. And you cannot have a serious conversation about cutting Medicaid funding without cutting this provider tax. Republicans and Democrats have talked about cutting it. Having our long-term state financial stability rely upon a provider tax that is currently under attack from Republicans and Democrats at the highest level is just not a very fiscally sound approach to running state government.
Okay, as one who counts votes, Jeremy, the Insurance and Banking Committee has 20 members.
Mm-hmm.
What's the pro and the against right now?
I mean, I can't say exactly a number, and I can't give a specific person's name, but I'll say this. I won't say any Democrats. I'll say that I know for sure that one Republican's voting yes. I know for sure.
And we've got 5 Democrats.
There's a few I don't know
so
about.
that's 6 yes votes, probably.
Not
If
necessarily.
David Shepard goes that way.
Not necessarily.
He's not a Republican. I can use his name.
Okay, okay.
I don't want
So
to use any
and you've
names
gotta have-
of anybody that's told me anything. I don't want to say a hard count.
You've got to have 11 to get it out of committee, correct?
Yes, the governor would need 11 of the 20. 10 to 10 would fail.
Or
Well-
10 if the speaker came in and voted.
That's not going to happen. I wouldn't think.
So what could the governor do that could swing another 5 or 6 votes to the positive side?
The issue, Dave, on insurance and banking, if you look at the people they have, like Glen Casada has a voting record since 2001. Charles Sargent has a voting record since 1997. You look at some of the people on the committee, Judd Matheny, Timothy Hill, Mark Pody, and then you have a laundry list of other people who co-signed my original Medicaid bill that simply said, we're not taking the dollars. There were 8 on that committee that signed my bill 2 years ago that just said, no matter what plan the governor has, we're not expanding. There were 8 co-sponsors on that committee. Some of the names that I just called were not among the co-sponsors, but you can just tell by how they vote that they're not going to vote for it.
So, Jack, if you were Governor Haslam, let's talk about the benefits of the bill and the intended beneficiaries of the bill. You've got potentially 470,000 Tennesseans that don't have health insurance now that would have an option to have health insurance under this bill. The hospital industry, what's the math on that? How much do they benefit? Are people going to lose their jobs if this doesn't pass? Are people going to get new jobs if it does pass? How does that flesh out?
The most pressing concern we have right now are some of our smaller rural hospitals. And Jeremy pointed this out very accurately. As passed, Obamacare is going to lead, I believe it's a 75% reduction in the dish payment. We call them dish payments. It's disproportionate share, I think is what that stands for. And that's money that hospitals get to help offset their indigent care. When someone shows up in the emergency room, they have to be treated and so forth. In some of these smaller rural areas where you have a small community hospital, oftentimes it's the largest employer in that particular county. It's obviously important for the well-being of the people in that area because, you know, if you're in a car wreck or if your child is sick or injured or you have a heart attack, having a hospital 10 minutes away can mean the difference in life and death. And some of these hospitals are going to close. They're not going to be able to survive once those dish payments are reduced or ultimately he's at least trying. Right. And if we all would pound our fist on the table and say, federal government, block grant this money that you currently provide, this 2-to-1 match, just write us a check and send it to Tennessee. We'll create our own health care program for the poor in Tennessee. And if we did, we would implement many of the reforms that Governor Haslam has proposed. And you know what? It'd be a much better system. It'd be a much more efficient system. So I don't know what's going to happen. I will say, I agree with my colleagues, this is going to be a tough, tough climb to get this thing passed next week in our special session. It's going to be tough. I'm not prepared to say it won't pass, but it's going to be tough. But what I do hope is that the governor's conversation and bringing some of these ideas forward may ultimately lead to some substantive reforms in existing Medicaid.
Hey, Dave, I want to add something real quick because 2 of the primary arguments on why to expand is because, number 1, it saves the rural hospitals, and number 2, it puts more people on insurance, thus more health care accessible. But if you look at the 26 states that have expanded, that is not the case. The Heritage Foundation put out a really good study that you still have significant rural hospital failures. It hasn't changed in states that have expanded, and the uninsured stay approximately the same percent of the population. So for the very reason we're even looking at it, historically, or at least the last year and a half, the other states proven not to be so.
So if the improvements that Governor Haslam has made to the Medicaid template, if you want to call it that, sounds like if the federal government would implement those nationwide, that Medicaid system would probably be a better system. Is it not worth the risk for a 2-year trial, as Jeremy has called it, to try it out and just see if this doesn't work better? And like the Tennessee Promise that Obama has now copied and taken nationwide from the community colleges, could we not be the role model for the rest of the country here?
I think
But I think-
Arkansas is the role model of why you don't do it. They want out of it now.
And let me say one thing on the Tennessee Promise, what we did on scholarship, there is no taxpayer dollars in that whatsoever.
Right.
That is all private through the lottery scholarships. So there's no, and there's a big difference, and I want to make this distinction. Here in Tennessee, that is strictly lottery scholarship money, not a single dollar of taxpayers. You notice when Obama said this was such a great program, he wants to do it with public dollars again. He wants to do it with tax dollars. This is where it makes it so impossible. There's only so many things you can fund. And we found a way, and we probably lead the country in different things. We found a way to do the Tennessee Promise not to cost taxpayers a penny.
Right.
And that's why it's going to be a successful program. That's why people like it. You know, 58,000 children have signed up. Probably nowhere near that's going to take advantage of it.
Right.
Or I hope not, because it may not be financially stable. But I mean, those are the things. That's the difference. You know, we have to make the distinction of privately doing things and publicly doing things, and that's the biggest distinction we're going to have to start making.
Audience, it's your turn. We'd love to have some of you step up to the microphone here at the podium and questions, comments, preferably questions. And who would like to be?
Any topic, right, Dave? It didn't have to be.
It can be any topic. I will say, our chamber membership luncheon on February, Matt, what's the date? February 19th will be a rerun of this show here, but there are a lot of other topics besides Insure Tennessee, and we're going to try to get to them on February 19th. So would love to have you there. But because of the complexity of this subject, I wanted to make sure we made an attempt to help everybody understand the issues here and how our gentlemen here feel about it.
And let me, I see there's a person back here with the Davis House, and probably a lot of people don't know what the Davis House does, but they do investigation on sexually abused children or, abused children. And here's what we're talking about funding. What I see every time is that these different agencies throughout our county, if we keep on going, they're all afraid they're going to be having cuts. The other day in the front page of the paper, you saw the what I call the disability, intellectual disability. You saw where that was going to be cut. And you cannot continually cut. And the disabled, you'd say all those should be covered under Medicare, Medicaid, TennCare, or something on that nature. But their funding is going to be cut if we have to do it by about $21 million. And it doesn't sound like much, but in all these different programs, I don't care if it's WAVES, because I'm looking at Diane, WAVES have already contacted me saying, please, Charles, whatever you can do, find money not to cut these programs. But at some point in time, if we continue to add to that, you have to find the money. And I use the BEP in Williamson County, but just looking in the audience, I have two people out there that are very involved in very needed programs that a 5% cut hurts them drastically. Drastically, because a lot of times the money they raise more private dollars than they do what the state is funding them. So it just puts a bigger burden.
Now you done it.
Now
you done it.
and, you know, excuse me, but it puts a bigger burden on these groups. And, you know, these are the tough decisions when you're sitting on finance. You know, I don't want to cut waves. I don't want to cut Davis House. But I know if I keep on adding programs, at some point in time, I have to do it.
Right.
Or we have to do it. I say I, and I shouldn't say I, but we will, because we're all going to vote on it. And those are the tough decisions that we have to make.
Let's see what Diane has to say here. Introduce yourself, Diane.
Good morning, gentlemen, and thank you all for what you do. I know you are faced with many challenges and decisions to make each time you come into session. I am Diane Giddens. I'm here this morning wearing my hat as president of the Board of Directors for WAVES. I want to introduce Shannon Nahus, who is our new executive director, to just give you a short synopsis of the impact of the proposed reduction to DIDS.
Good morning. I'm Shannon Nahus with WAVES, and I appreciate you referencing the proposal for the reduction in services to Tennessee community providers, and that's really what I wanted to bring to your attention, that there is a proposal for up to the governor for a reduction of services up to 7% for providers like WAVES here in Tennessee. If the impact to WAVES, it would be a 7.75%, which would affect the services we provide, which would be a total annually of $60,000 for the services that we provide, reduction of services. I wanted to tell you real quick, I had a letter from a sister of a brother that we have supported for 20 years. He gets real minimal services. He's not in a wheelchair. He doesn't have mobility issues. He doesn't need feeding. And so he's real independent in many ways, but because he has because of his intellectual disability, he needs someone to check on him in his apartment, to make sure he has groceries, to make sure he has, his bills paid. And we do that. And his sister, who lives in Washington, who's retired, who is not able to, she's a financial supporter of WAVES, but without the help of Tennessee, her brother doesn't get the support he needs. And she said, I would be devastated if his services were reduced. He gets such minimal services. Any reduction would be a big impact. So I have signed the petition. It's called Protect Disability Care. It's been out for a couple of days, and there's already 5,000 signatures. So there's been a real immediate response. People, family members, citizens are responding to this, and I ask for your support. And I appreciate the support that we've been given.
Okay.
I think this is very important. There are actually a large number of people who have intellectual or developmental disabilities who are waiting to get on TennCare right now, and we're talking about putting a very large number of able-bodied childless adults ahead of them. And the problem with that is you have two different matching formulas, because the people who might be eligible right now but haven't gotten on the program, they're a 2-to-1 match. These other folks would be like a 9-to-1 match. So who do you think would be on the chopping block first if we had to take people off the TennCare rolls? That's the problem. We have a population of 88% able-bodied childless adults that are going to be at a much favorable matching rate than the 2-to-1 population that we have now. So we have people right now who really probably should be on TennCare, and we're talking about putting other people in front of them. So I think this is a very good thing that you're talking about. People need to be aware that these cuts are very possible.
Thank you. And we're trying to spread the word.
Yeah, and in this program, I wasn't trying to diffuse the issue, but I want to show you, I was trying to explain what happens on the downside effect when you look, and $60,000 is not a great deal of money, but that would take a lot of people going into these homes. It'd probably take that program almost away.
Okay, let's back up a minute.
Okay.
I'm a little confused, but how is WAVES, how is this tied together? I don't quite understand.
Okay, let me explain how it's tied together then. Like I said in the beginning, we've asked all our departments for the last 4, 5, 6 years to make reductions because our revenues are not there to do some of this stuff. I think I said we're projecting revenues, and they're doing a little better this year. as you know, back in October, the governor has asked all the departments, every single department, for a 7% reduction. We're not going to have to do that. Revenues have come in better, so it will not be a 7, but it may be a 2% reduction.
Right.
And so if our revenues go up $300 million, which sounds like a great deal, but it's like 1% of our total budget.
Okay.
And there are statutory increases we have to make to the BEP, to the court system, to TennCare, $170 million. I've used up all the money, so then at some point, and I say I'm speaking
Sure.
as a whole, the state, that we have to go to these agencies and say, I need 1%, 2%.
Yep.
We have to do it across the board. It's not just the two I mentioned here because they're sitting here today, but it's higher education. We're cutting higher education. We make up for it by raising tuition.
Gotcha.
5, 6, 7%, instead of possibly just doing tuition at the inflation cost of 2 or 3%, but they're a paying client, so we can get private money that way.
Right.
But I keep on, if you look at what we've funded higher education over the last 10 years, the state is paying less and less every single year because of these cuts. So it has an overall broad effect on everybody.
Right.
And this is what I don't think the average person, you know, they say cut. Well, that's basically what the last couple of years,
Right.
That's what we've been doing. You know, the governor last year had pay raises in there, and at the end, we didn't have the money. He cut $75 million of pay raises.
Right.
And I mean, these are the gut-wrenching things that you have to do sometimes. And, you know, when Miss Diane calls me and says, Charles, we can't afford this, or David calls, Marcus calls me in the back, and, you know, when you're looking at your individual things in your county, it becomes very difficult. And,
Very personal.
you know, very personal because there's a face to that person.
Right.
And, you know, and I know the people in Waves. I know I don't know any of the children in the abuse center, but I mean, because we're not allowed to know, but there are, you know, these are real faces and real people.
Right.
And excuse me, I didn't mean to get off on, I apologize, so.
Circuit judge just walked in, so I'm pleading the fifth from this
Jack's in
point on.
trouble now.
Well, we appreciate your support, and I did want to mention too, Representative Durham, talking about the waiting list. There are 300 people in Williamson County on the waiting list for services, so.
I want to
you know,
make sure that able-bodied childless adults do not get ahead of those 300 people.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir, we got time for one more short question, so, tell us who you are and, what's your question?
Kevin Petch. I've been a 20-year resident of Franklin, Tennessee, and just wanted to ask, and then I have a comment about community college paying for that. But your point about the block grant, who do we need to be hounding to get that pushed? Because it sounds like what you've all been saying, and I'm certainly getting a head nod from you, that we would have a plan that would safety net the truly indigent, but it would be the right plan for us financially, fiscally speaking, going forward.
Yeah, and we don't have time, and we've all been on this soapbox many times, but roughly half of our state budget is what we refer to as federal money. Now, again, it's not federal money. They take it from us, it goes to Washington, and then they send it back to us through our state budget, and we have to comply with all these federal demands.
So,
when you're
so
driving
is that Marcia and our senators we need?
But they would all support it. That's the,
President.
well, our Tennessee delegation, I'm not sure about Jim Cooper or Steve Cohen in the congressional delegation, but at least on the Republican side, they would all support what we're talking about. And it is something, and we're just at a breaking point. We're teetering now. We're about to get to the point where you don't even need a state government. Just let everything be run out of Washington, because all this money, whether you're driving on an interstate, you like the HOV lanes out there? That's not our idea. That's federal government saying you got to put in HOV lanes or you won't get your federal gas tax dollars.
Okay, so Marcia and the senators, we need a hound.
Well, I would encourage you to call them, but they're with us on this issue. But I'm telling you,
They need to hear from more of us.
and as we approach the 2016 presidential election, and obviously all of Congress will be up and a third of the Senate will be up, this needs to be a #1 issue. And I'll tell you what, anyone that's running for president and wants to come and ask ask for my vote, and hopefully any other Tennesseans' vote. You better support block granting this Medicaid money to the state, block grant our transportation dollars to the state, and I don't want one single education dollars, and I don't want one federal guideline attached to it. It's our money. Send it to us. We can educate our kids in Tennessee. We can take care of our own environment and water in Tennessee. We can take care of our own roads, education, and we can take care of our own health care here. Send us our money and get out of our business, Washington.
Okay, on
Jack's on his game today.
I think that probably ended it real well.
Well, quick comment on the education one, because I heard 99.7 just broadcast that 31% of the community college kids graduate. So we're paying for 70% failure. If we follow the template of corporate America, we would only pay for success. Corporate America does not pay in advance for these kids to go to school. You get your grades, you get your degree, they reimburse you. If we did the same, there'd be how many kids going to school for free and getting a successful degree instead of wasting 70% of our money there.
Thank you, sir. We've certainly, I've learned a lot. Appreciate the education this morning, guys. And we hope that you've enjoyed the discussion. Next month, we will get into more issues about education and various other things that are certainly going to be discussed. But because of the special session, we wanted to spend quite a bit of time on the Insure Tennessee this morning, and we appreciate your participation in that. We appreciate your being here. That is the Public Affairs Roundtable for January. Look forward to having you back next month.
Tinnitus is a ringing in your ears that won't stop. It's always there. It won't go away. What causes tinnitus? Being exposed to loud sounds for extended periods of time, like at a concert, sporting event, or listening to your MP3 player at excessive levels. Why does it matter to you? Because teenagers are 30% more likely to develop noise-induced hearing loss. And it all could be prevented with one of these. It is so simple. Don't let it happen to you.
I'm a deputy sheriff, and I'm the educational coordinator for the litter grant program. We're trying to keep Williamson County litter-free. And with the litter grant program, we have 4 deputies that are actually assigned to the litter grant program. And they take inmates out that are convicted of misdemeanors, and they do roadside cleanup. And in cold or hot weather, they're working. So they really work hard. We have these litter bag dispensers, and they're at every convenience center in Williamson County. And this is for the citizens that come in to the convenience center and supply them with litter bags to help them not to litter. This is a motivating factor, I think, to have a litter bag in your car and keep you from littering. Someone driving in a car toss something out, and you could be driving behind them. They're not. In fact, even if they see a police car, some people aren't aware that it's against the law to litter. Go ahead and throw something from the car, and then you pull them over and cite them for littering. I'm Deputy Duplass with Williamson County Sheriff's Department. Yeah. And the reason why I'm stopping you, sir, is because you were littering.
I didn't think nothing about that was littering.
Well, I'm sorry, sir, that's against the law in Williamson County and the state of Tennessee. The information that we're getting out to the general population, I think we're doing really well. I think we're winning the battle so far. You know, it's a beautiful, beautiful county, and we want to keep it that way, litter-free.